what is the effect on architecture when they build buildings without the right proportion?
And the effects on those in them.
Yes, and the effects on those in them. What I'm saying is, yes, the right proportions are important, but we must define the reason why you need the right proportions before you can start building. The right proportions are only important to the extent that they create the right electric field. It's the electric field that determines whether people are having bliss, whether seeds are germinating, whether people are getting an immune system. We have come to some significant insights about what it is that could empower architecture to really serve biology. And it begins with a very simple idea. And that idea is that everything that wishes to be alive needs to store the information that is life electrically. Effectively, it's just a model to say that we have been talking about freshness and life force and chi and orgone and prana, and we've used all those words. But now, having measured the electric field that tells us when an egg is fresh or when an apple is fresh, we know, we can say with some confidence, that all those words, spirit, chi, orgone, prana, shaktipat, freshness, vitality, all of those words are really descriptions of a charge field, a dielectric, capacitive, weak electric field. Simple way to understand this? How do you know if a seed is alive or dead? What a mystery, right? I'm an electrical engineer. I would like to have an answer for electrical engineers for that question. Well, if you study a seed in the ground and you're trying to find out if it's alive or dead, what you're essentially doing is, supposing you were watching it in a microscope just at the moment it first germinates. What would actually make the seed alive is, if you remember Star Trek now, what's a tractor beam? A tractor beam in Star Trek is when you can change the angle of an approaching spacecraft to suck it in at the angle you want it to arrive. And a seed uses a tractor beam, which is a capacitive field, an electric field, to suck in an approaching water molecule, because therein lies the food, the dissolved mineral. So in effect, quite literally, the seed is alive if it can make a weak electric field to change the angle of an approaching water molecule. So life or death is that electric field. Is that complicated? So, where did that electric field get in the seed? How did that seed get an electric field strong enough to change the angle of a coming water molecule? The drama is, if we look at some pictures, we have beautiful pictures of these things, that what makes the water in a living cell alive is it forms a dodecahedral, which is a five-sided cage called a clathrate cage. And this makes water more electrically conductive. And there's a whole famous Nobel Prize on electronic biology and cancer by Albert Szent-Györgyi, Marine Woods Hole Biological Laboratories, showing that it's the order in water inside the cell, the electric order of water, that's the difference between cancer and health. So again and again, life is the electric field compressed so it can radiate, and that electric field is the secret of life. Now that has implications for architecture. We're talking about the fact that everything that you consider the memory of who is you is in fact the shape of electric fields that have compressed in your body, in your cells, in your DNA, in your blood. So the ability to have life and survival and memory, and even maybe memory after death, depends on whether electric fields are compressed efficiently inside you, inside your blood, inside your DNA, inside your cells. So the trick is compression. And it turns out that in pure science, pure physics, pure mathematics, the perfect form of compression is called fractal. Think fraction of the all. Now fractals are not difficult to imagine. Imagine a rose, imagine a pine cone, imagine a fern, imagine an onion. It's something where you could zoom in forever and the inside always looks like the outside. that are self-similar, where the inside looks like the outside, called fractal, can be compressed perfectly, can be compressed infinitely, can be compressed non-destructively. It turns out that the golden mean ratio, because this number, 0.618033989, is the only ratio that allows a sequence of numbers to both add and multiply. It's called the sacred cut, the golden mean, and it is literally the geometry also of perfect compression. That if the electric field made by a structure is not fractal, then charge distribution bleeds and life dies.
And what could you say about the current state of architecture in the world?
Therein lies the problem. Oh my God. Yeah, it's a very simple experiment. You could do this experiment for 10 cents in every architecture college on planet Earth. You take 100 germinating seeds, you put them in a little dish. Now, keeping the temperature and moisture the same, you put that little dish inside a metal cage. Guess what? The seeds die. Now, you take those same seeds and you put them in the center of a pattern of paramagnetic stone, like Stonehenge, and the seeds go ploop, 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 and they grow beautifully. Oh, is that a complicated experiment? Gee, it cost 10 cents to do it. How come they didn't do that experiment in your architecture college?
And the analogy, right, is that the steel cage is equivalent to the steel frame of most modern buildings.
That's the point. Thank you. Thank you. Let's be clear. So, we need to understand why it is that a metal building kills a germinating seed. This needs to be taught to your architecture professors. That's why we're here. So we're here to explain the principle, the physics, the details of why that is so. Because we saw that all of DNA and all of life is based on golden ratio. We know for centuries that everybody who talked about sacred buildings and sacred architecture was always talking about golden mean ratio. The Parthenon, golden mean ratio. The sarcophagus in the Great Pyramid, golden mean ratio. The pyramid itself, golden mean ratio. There's 100 ways in which the golden mean ratio appears in the Great Pyramid, but the simplest one, just for now, the width to the length of the sarcophagus in the Great Pyramid, the width to the length of the Parthenon. Very, very simple. I mean, there's lots of ways. But what we want to explain now is that we wish to define that beauty for electricians, for physicists, for scientists. We want a definition of what it is that defines beauty in a way that it becomes measurable. If you put an electric field sensor, a capacitor, in the center of the Great Pyramid, what you measure there is what's called harmonic inclusiveness. The fact that more and more different waves of charge are able to converge non-destructively in one place. And where charge waves can agree, fractal compression is permitted, biology gets happy. Now, it's not complicated. We need to understand that in strict scientific medical terms, and that's where we use the medical literature. It turns out that in the studies on your heart, which is the strongest source of voltage and charge in your body, that the more harmonics, the more wavelengths that are in your heart, it's called heart rate variability, the more you resist almost all disease. So literally you can predict the vitality, how long you're going to live, by simply checking your heart. If there's one frequency there only, you're toast, man. You're dead. All disease is coming. You might as well write your will, man. You're going to die. Whereas, if you check your heart and you find harmonic inclusiveness there, you know that statistically, all chronic disease is going to disappear. It's the work of Dr. Irving Dardick, MD, former chairman of the Olympic Medical Committee, the famous recent best-selling book, Making Waves. It was originally published in Cycles magazine. He calls it super looping or perfect nesting. Lovely things. It essentially means the healthy heart is a fractal heart, except now we define that as the heart that can attract the most number of different frequencies at once. See, are we saying that architects don't have heart? Oh, that might be a bit insulting. What we are saying is we haven't understood what is at the heart of architecture until we understand what is at the heart of the electric field that can serve all of biology. To tect an arc means to build an arch. How do you build an arch? You have to build the angle of charge curvature, which creates self-similarity. It's called non-destructive self-reentry for charge. Golden ratio. In physics, it's called, the golden mean spiral is called optimized translation of vorticity. The best way for a line to become a circle, or vice versa, which is the best way for energy to become mass, and vice versa, which is simply non-destructive compression of charge. Defining creation, defining life itself, in terms of how information gets into one place, the bios of the logos. So this needs to be taught to architects, but they need to understand then that all this bit about, well, I put this golden proportion in this room and this room, and you know, that's fine, that's romantic, but the fact is, the way the architect's paycheck should be determined would be, you put a capacitor and a dish of germinating seeds in the center of the building after they've designed it and built it, and see if that building is a biologic capacitor. See if that building can make an electric field to cause a seed to germinate. Compress the charge efficiently, then radiate the charge efficiently. It's true of seeds, and it ought to be true of buildings. What does this mean? It means in the future buildings will look like pine cones, and they'll have the same materials as pine cones. Remember the design for the city of Prague. It's a rose. The pine cone opens and closes very gradually in a gorgeous, beautiful arc, just like it's breathing with the seasons over the year. And it's called projective geometry. Steiner called it etheric formative force. We now know that projective geometry and etheric formative force are names for an electric field capacitively coupled. Yeah? Anyway, so what that pine cone is doing, and remember, each seed on the surface of the pine cone is a capacitor, a condenser, to condense charge. Each seed on the surface of that pine cone is deciding how much voltage does this pine cone need to suck out of the gravity field. It's an electric generator. Very simple. Here's the next little challenge for your biophysics department at your university. I got this really fresh chicken egg here, and I notice if my voltmeter is high impedance, and I put the voltmeter on opposite ends, if the chicken egg is fresh, I get about 4 to 14 millivolts. I want you to go to the head of your biophysics department and ask him, please, her, where the voltage came from, please, because if they don't know, I think they should get re-educated. That voltage is life. Where did it come from? The fact is, the egg and the pine cone are fractal. They can suck in charge literally from the gravity field, and that's the secret of life. So all of biology goes lots of work to get fractal in order to suck in charge from the ambient field effect, and that's the secret of being alive. And that is the secret of designing a building.